Okay, they say third time's the charm, so here goes try number 3 for this particular video. I wanted to go back to spinning from the fold because that first video I made, you couldn't actually see the foldy part, which was, kind of the whole point of the video. So we're going to do that again today. Today is I'm finding a really good day to do a lot of experiments. I just came back from a fiber festival in Arizona. Uh, I met many inspiring people. I saw lots of inspiring things, and I got some inspiring fiber, which unfortunately I already spun on the first 2 attempts at this video where there was no sound. So this fiber that someone gave me, the man called it lily fiber, and it is another one of the many manufactured fibers that are now available for hand spinners. Manufactured fibers are different from man-made fibers, human-made fibers, which are petrochemical based. Things like your acrylics and your polyesters. Those are all based on petrochemicals. Manufactured fibers, on the other hand, come from natural substances like bamboo, or what I've got right next to me, and sorry about these crinkly bags, they're going to crinkle every time I move here. This is rose fiber, and I don't know if it comes from the rose petals or the rose stems, or both, or leaves. But rose is one. This is milk fiber that I dyed. So they mostly come from plants, but the milk fiber actually comes from an animal, so it's a protein fiber. And this is an example of, try and get it in view here, lotus. And again, I'm not sure if it's stems, petals, leaves, all of the above, but these manufactured fibers, the unused parts of the plant, or in the case of bamboo, the stems, are thrown into a vat, mixed into a slurry that is broken down to the cellular level, as far as I know, with some sort of chemical bath. And then imagine a shower head with really teeny tiny holes for the water. The slurry is extruded through these holes in the spinneret, as it's called. And then that can be combed into top. So one of the things about these manufactured fibers, and before I get into spinning them, I want to mention there are debates about how more or less environmentally friendly the making of these manufactured fibers is compared to the petrochemical man-made ones. Certainly these will break down because they are naturally based. They are not forever chemicals, but that is the extent of what I know about it. So if this is something that you're concerned about, I encourage you to look at Spin-Off and Ply magazine to see what articles they might have on the other ramifications of these fibers. So for spinning these fibers, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky because they're really slippery and they have no stretch. I mean, zero stretch. There is just no give to them. So because they are so slippery, often spinning from the fold turns out to be a really useful way to get them into a yarn you like, a yarn without lumps and bumps, and so on and so forth, and a less dense yarn. So let me explain what I mean by that. First, I'm going to try this rose fiber, and I'm going to spin it with a forward draft, a worsted style draft. And since this is top and all the fibers are combed into perfect alignment, it will be a worsted style yarn. Okay, so spinning, spinning, spinning. And that was one of my worst joins ever. And you can see in the drafting triangle here that everything's perfectly aligned. And it's making a nice yarn. It's making a consistent yarn. I'm not getting lumps and bumps the way I could, the way I was doing with that silk from the previous video. However, it is super dense. If I had a good way to show you how dense this yarn is, I would do it. But I would need to spin 2 skeins in the different styles and then weigh and make sure they were the same yardage and then weigh them to show you the difference in their density. And that is not something I've got the time to do right now. So, without further ado, you're just going to have to trust me on that. Without further ado, let me pull out a hank of fiber to spin from the fold. And I'm just pulling out a length of it. And in fact, I'm going to split this in half because the smaller my units from the fold get, the less of a mess I get at the end. So I have wrapped this small hank of fiber over my index finger, and I'm not gripping it tightly. I am just folding it and holding it loosely in my hand. And you're going to see the join start when the wheel starts spinning. So you can start to see the join happen. And one of the other cool things about spinning from the fold, besides the fact that it introduces air, because these fibers are no longer perfectly aligned, they're bent, it introduces some air into the singles, and it's just a really relaxing way to spin. I love to spin from the fold, just because it gets rid of some of the tedium of the inchworm method, and if I don't compress too much, it's great. Okay, so here we are at the end, and this one has turned out really well. Sometimes you can end up with a kind of gob of fiber left over in your hand, and that is probably because you were gripping it too tightly, or you're me. So I'm going to do this next batch, and we'll just kind of see how this goes. And again, that join happened because I held the spun yarn right in front of my drafting triangle, and yep, I lost that one. Right in front of my drafting triangle, and it just caught right on. You know, twist happens. We all know that as spinners, and it's so cool. So the first time I spun rose fiber, I spun an entire skein of a 4-ounce braid, and I must have spun it with a worsted draft because it's dense and zero stretch. The fiber I have now, I'm planning to blend in with other fibers that do have memory, because the plant fiber, the manufactured fiber, will add some sheen to the yarn, and the fiber with memory will make it a bouncier, springier yarn. So you notice I'm even getting a medium style draft, and it's much more of a woolen draft coming from the point. I can fiddle with it. So if I reach a gobbet, I'm just pinching and then pulling out the gob and continuing on my merry way. So that is the rose fiber. I want to try some milk fiber, and you can see, and this might have happened in the dyeing process, but it might also just be how I received it. I honestly can't remember. I've had this for a really long time. That this braid is just a disaster. Something happened. It got split. I messed it up. It's not going to be easy to spin with a worsted spin. Haha, but watch what happens when I spin from the fold. So this will work better. And I know this because I tried it in rehearsal. So adding just a tiny bit of air, doing it with more of a woolen draft, and suddenly I'm home free. And not pinching it too much, not compressing it, unless I hit an uneven spot that I want to draft out further. So this is spinning from the fold on 2 different manufactured fibers based on natural materials. Oh, and see here, you can see that everything fell apart because I was no longer spinning from the fold. I was spinning from the end of the top. But I can just take this little bit and do some more spinning from the fold. So on these monochromatic or undyed fibers, spinning from the fold is a really good option when it's slippery, when it's a dense fiber, when you want a loftier yarn. And that is one of the options you have as a spinner.